So I'm going to reach this. On ForeFlight, we're going to go to the More tab, and then we're going to click on Aircraft. Now, the one I'm going to add is not on my list. You'll see I've already got some aircraft here. And when you first start ForeFlight, I'll get that going like that. The list of aircraft, there won't be anything here. So if you've just started with ForeFlight, you won't see anything. These are just the aircraft that I've already added. So up here on top, you'll see the plus, and this is where you're going to go to add your aircraft. And once you do that, you'll see it added one here with no tail number. And I don't know about you, I don't fly aircraft with no tail numbers. So let's put one in here on the right side. Now we're going to start filling this in. First thing it needs is required is a tail number. So I'm going to tap here, and I'm going to type November 31 Alpha. No, wrong keyboard. I'm typing it on my keyboard on my PC. Tail number November 31.
Still not going to work.
Nope, still not going to work. Alpha Juliet is the aircraft that I'm going to use, and those of you in the same flying club I am might recognize that. No call sign. I don't need the serial number now. I don't have it. It's not required. An aircraft type is required. Anything with an exclamation point triangle up here, you see that color? Aircraft is missing, so we need a type. What type aircraft is this November 31 Alpha Juliet? So I'm going to click on that, and I'm just going to, it's a 182. I'm going to type 182. I happen to know it's a P model, so I can put a P on there. And so it filters out, kind of like, most filters on applications that you use, it filters out anything with 182P in it. So at that point, I can see the one, there are a couple options for 182Ps. There's actually 3. It doesn't have this STC, and I know that this aircraft has the 0470S model engine, not the 0470R. So there are 4 ForeFlight performance profiles for the R and 4 profiles for the P. So the P is what I want. That's what model I have. I'm going to go ahead and select that. And now it knows what kind of aircraft I have. What kind of color is this aircraft? Well, it's white with blue trim. So the primary color is white. It defaults to that. And the secondary color is blue. So not turquoise, but blue. And so I'll just check on blue and then click out of that. White/blue. Home airport, I could put that in if it's always at the same airport. So why not? That's where the flying club is. I'll put that in there. This airplane has an airspeed indicators in knots. And you want to be sure and do this because it could throw a lot of things off if you're expecting miles per hour, but you see knots. So I'm going to select knots here. Would you like to convert the existing speed value, best glide speed, to knots? Yeah, because right now the best glide speed right here is 85 miles per hour. It's obviously that's not the equivalent in knots. So yes, go ahead and convert that. Now you can see it's 74 knots. So here are the 4 performance profiles that they referred to. And those are cruise performance. So we've got a climb, we've got 4 cruise profiles, and we've got a descent. Someone emailed me earlier today asking about in the profile view, they couldn't get it to do the crossing altitude. They got an error. You need to have a default descent in your profile. There's only one descent profile here. And so I'm going to go ahead and select that, and I'm going to make that the default. You can adjust some things. You can adjust the time or the fuel by a few minutes or a few gallons. If in your experience, your airplane just always seems to burn less in descent or always seems to take longer in the descent phase than ForeFlight is planning. But we'll say ForeFlight's getting it right. And we're going to go ahead and make this the default descent profile. Now you can see it says default here. The climb profile is already default. And we tap on that, it's max rate of climb. And again, you can add in some biases here that will adjust that climb. So if you're trying to, if you know that your aircraft is, you fly it with bugs all the time and you don't wash the bugs off and it doesn't climb as well, then you might add another minute or 2 to the time and fuel for climb. And you can adjust that here, and you can apply that to all climb profiles if you know your airplane, because maybe you've got wheel pants and this is based on one that doesn't. Something like that affects it, and you want to make that adjustment. You would apply it. So let's go back to the profiles, and so we've got the 4 cruise profiles here. All 4 of them have max manifold pressure because we're going to get up to an altitude where we're going to just have get all the pressure we can. It's not turbocharged. but we're going to have, you can see there are different RPMs here, which you select whatever your default is. Rental aircraft, might be the highest one you can get. Your own aircraft, you're buying the fuel, might be the lower RPM, or you might want it quieter. Well, we'll just select, it's set as 2450 RPM for the default. I'm going to go ahead and set it to 23. I don't send a cruise at high power settings. And again, here you can give it a bias if you know that your aircraft either is slower than advertised or cruises, burns more or less fuel. So I'm going to go ahead and make that the default. So now I've got a default, go back, climb, a default cruise, and a default descent profile. You can add a profile if you want. If none of these are what you want, you can add your own profile. What is the profile name? And you can just call this whatever you want. We'll call it my profile. And what am I going to climb? I'm going to climb not at VY, but I'm going to climb at, say, 90 knots. And I'm going to close that because this is how I want to do a cruise climb. This is how I fly. It will actually plan your time, speed, distance to climb based on this profile if you select it. So the climb fuel per hour, I'll go ahead and put in, I'm making this up because I haven't looked. We'll say 20 gallons per hour. What's a good climb burn for the 182, Mike?
Yeah, I'd say, depending on altitude, probably 20, 21.
Okay, and I would go conservative on that. So what if it tells you more and you don't burn enough, right? What I
Exactly.
don't want is it telling me it's only going to burn this much and it burns a lot more.
Right.
Yeah, and climb feet per minute. At 90 knots, I'm probably only going to get an average of maybe 400 feet a minute, we'll say. Probably going to be better than that in a 182. Depends on how you load it. So again, all of this is you're going to have to put some biases in depending on how you fly it. What's the cruise true? What do you get, Mike? 139, 40, 50?
I'm usually pessimistic. I put about 135 in there.
135. So we'll put that in. And Mike has a 182. That's why I'm asking him these questions. The cruise fuel per hour, what would you say? 13 gallons, 12 gallons?
I'm conservative there too. I put 13 gallons an hour.
Okay.
When I was flying a couple days ago back from Colorado, I was doing about 12, 11 and a half, 12.
Okay. I saw someone ask, do I still need Zoom? And no, you don't. I see 210 people still on the Zoom, and I hope they're not people who aren't here. But if you are here and on the Zoom, you can go ahead and close that out. You can rejoin if this drops off and fails. Looks like it's working though. So while we're cruising along here, we got the cruise burn and then descent. I typically keep my power up in the descent, so I'll plan my cruise speed, but I'm going to get better than that because I just lower the nose and keep cruise power setting. So we'll just plan 135 for the descent. That gives me the option to power back if I want to, but I'll probably beat that. And I do the same thing for the descent fuel per hour. If I got the same power setting, we're going to say 13 gallons an hour. I know I'm probably going to power back at some point, but I also know that the fuel burn is going to increase as I descend. So I think this is pretty good. When I descend, I usually plan a descent at 500 feet a minute. It's comfortable on the ears. It's easy math for me to plan a descent. And in case you're wondering how I do that, if you're a new pilot, if you're an experienced pilot and you've got your way of doing this, don't change it now. Do what you do. But for new pilots, I basically figure I'm going to descend at 500 feet a minute. If pattern altitude is 1,000 and I'm cruising at 6,500 feet, well, then I need to lose 5,500 feet to get to pattern altitude. Did I do that math right? I did. So 5,500 feet. Well, how many 500 feet are there in there? There's 11. So it's going to take 11 minutes. So I now that we have GPS, I basically will say, okay, there's a point where I enter on the 45 for the pattern, and I want to be 11 minutes before that. I'm going to start a 500 foot a minute rate of descent. So put that in there. So this is our default profile. I'll click make default and go back, and you'll see that we have a default profile set is this basic one, my profile. And that's for everything. You can see the defaults went away over here. A lot of the other things like your profiles and your flight planning are going to require this performance to be set up to be accurate or to work. You'll see some things won't work unless you have this set up properly. And if you don't have the Performance Plus subscription to ForeFlight, you may not have the ability to make custom profiles. Is that correct, Mike? Do you know offhand? It's either that or you don't get the ForeFlight performance profiles automatically in there. One of the two.
If it knows about the performance profiles, it pulls up some standard ones.
Okay.
And I think this also might be a Pro Plus or Performance Plus level feature. So if
Okay.
you've got basic, you might not have it.
Okay. I'm gonna do a
So
quick post a chat because there's like 100 chats in there. I'm just gonna say I see that people are answering it.
yeah, I'm working on a couple.
Boom one. Put it on there. So, Mike, I'm going to buy you a quieter keyboard.
Or give me some slower fingers or something. I'm
Or,
sorry.
no, that's okay. It's all right. They need to know how frantically we're working on this.
Yeah.
So, as we come back here to the performance profile, you can see now there are 5 profiles because we have my profile in there now. Runway profiles. Is this serial numbers? It's using the runway
Yes.
profile for these serial numbers based on the
Yes.
model number and engine that I put in there.
So
That
it's
I
funny, whenever I see a list like that, I wonder, okay, what is serial number 1826347
yeah,
Whose airplane is that?
that's probably the guy that works in the Cessna factory who decided to put something better in his airplane.
Yeah, often I'm told it's usually they pull one out of the regular production line to test improvements in the next year model. So it's got some of the next year
Yeah,
things.
that could be it too. Yeah, there are, but needless to say, there are exceptions. You need to be aware of that.
Yes.
The runway surface, if you're always taking off out of a grass runway, you might want to change this because it's going to affect the performance for takeoff distance and stuff for that aircraft. Then you can add a safety factor. I like this because 1.0 is the test pilot on a brand new airplane. Mine airplane is not brand new, and I'm not a test pilot, so you might put like 1.2 in there just to give yourself a little bit of a buffer in there, safety factor. And same thing with runway distance. Why not? Why if you have a 2,800 foot runway and your distance required is 2,800 feet, is that good enough for you? Would you do that? Nope. So I'm gonna put 1.2 on here just to give myself a little bit of a buffer.
Ooh, careful. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you need 18,000 feet.
Right. In my
So
fire
I'll
breathing
leave it dry and
182.
paved. If I was doing my Citabria, I would change this to grass. So back to the uh, aircraft setup. These speeds were automatically populated and they're accurate. You can change them if they're wrong. It could happen. Um, the best and the glide ratio here is 8.5. That's what needs to be set up for your glide advisor to work properly. I again like to go a little conservative here as well. So what does a glide ratio of 8.5 mean? Well, basically, if you and it's saying that you're going to glide for every foot of altitude, you're going to glide 8.5 feet forward. So every 1,000 feet of altitude, you're going to glide 8,500 feet forward. So if a nautical mile is 6,000 feet, that's, one and a third, 1 1/4 mile at 1,000 feet. I like to give a little bit less there. I would say, okay, for a 182, I'm just going to put 8 in there just to give it a little conservative buffer that my airplane maybe will only glide 8,000 feet from 1,000 feet or 16,000 feet from 2,000 feet. So that basically means that you can go about almost 3 miles from 2,000 feet, which is about right. And what do you use for your 182 on the glide ratio, Mike?
I was just gonna say I use I think 8.5 to 1 on mine, but let me share my iPad for just a moment here,
Okay,
Brian, and I'll
sure.
show you. This is a page. Oops, I gotta turn that
That's a
off.
socialflight.com, and you can see there's some great activities and photos and going on there.
Yeah, how did that come up? I love that site. There's so much good, fun stuff to do on there.
Oh my
Places
gosh.
to go, classes to take online, and Jeff does a great program every week on Tuesday afternoons.
He
Great
does.
stuff.
I question the guests that he has on there sometimes, but generally
Yeah,
speaking, his shows are
there's that
great.
one guy.
Yeah,
He thinks he's an airline pilot, knows everything.
right.
But let me turn
Wannabe
that one off.
poser.
But this is what I wanted to show. This is in the emergency section of this one happens to be for a TR 182. But a lot of airplane flight manuals will have a similar diagram to this. So remember that this is thousands of feet on the side, but it's miles over here.
So that's
So
like 60,000 feet. 10 miles is about 60,000 feet, right?
um, yeah, you failed out of math class, didn't you? That's
10
about a 1.2 miles or something. So 1.2 over 10 reciprocal, that's about 8.5 or so is your glide ratio.
miles.
So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you could do a little funky math with that and get your number. I've seen similar numbers in Mooney POHs, so this is a good place to go to get just a ballpark. And we don't need a micrometer for this kind of calculations. There are so many variables involved in determining this number. So we just want kind of a ballpark, and this is the best place I found to find that.
Okay. I see that Philip posted that he has the middle subscription plan and doesn't have the performance profiles. I think you have to have the performance plus. I think that's how they named it. Uh, so that would make sense.
Hmm.
But also, I think we need to recrop your iPad. It looks like it's cutting off the top. Since this is a beta, we can talk
No,
about.
that's actually about right. I've got that blown up a little bit, and yeah, that's about perfect.
Okay, I just don't see
At
the
least,
clock and the top of the iPad settings.
uh,
Just something to look at later.
yeah, okay. Well, we
Okay.
got a list going.
All right.
Okay.
Okay, so back to my iPad. We have the glide ratio set, and the weights are in units are in pounds. If you're in another country, you use kilos. You can change that to kilograms. A lot of countries still use those. Have evolved into using that. We're still using pounds. And then empty your basic empty weight. You're going to get this from your weight and balance information. And the max zero fuel weight, these limits will be from your manual. Max ramp weight, these are the limits from the 182 manual. But your zero fuel weight needs to be in here. Your basic empty weight will be right here. And this is not going to transfer over to the weight and balance. That's a different beast. It's like a different app within the app here. So this is just setting up for your fuel weights, your takeoff weight, and your flight planning, basically. The again fuel type, 100 low lead. That might change soon. They got other. They do have other in there.
Mm.
And we're using gallons. You can do it in pounds. Some people like to do that. And then what do you use for start, taxi, takeoff fuel? If you failed one of my flight reviews, you might do a half a gallon for all that. But
I use two in mine.
two, yeah, I like that. Be conservative. That I might sit there for, especially if you fly IFR and you're waiting for IFR release.
Yeah.
And then your total usable fuel, 56 gallons. And then you can change your reserve policy on the fuel. And what part are you flying under? I'm part 91 or 135. So it's going to add, if it's an IFR flight, 45 minutes. If it's a VFR flight,
I was doing 134 and a half.
yeah, you fly those a lot.
Yep.
So I'll just leave this on part 91 and down here to the filing equipment. So the FAA equipment on board the aircraft is, what do we have? That's what navigation do we have on board? If you just have a GPS, I think most are going to be slant golf. Is that correct, Mike?
Yes.
And that's with en route, terminal, and approach. If you have if you're LM, like you can do LMP or something, is that a different category here?
Yes. That's not in there. This is the FAA equipment code.
Oh, okay.
So they just want to know if you have a GPS that is basically an IFR GPS. So if your
Right.
GPS can do approaches, then you have a slant golf.
Yeah,
as
that's
far as
panel
they're concerned.
mounted, IFR approved. That is not for if you have ForeFlight
Correct.
on an
Yeah,
iPad.
exactly.
Yeah,
And sometimes they pay attention to that, not always.
yeah, yeah. So back to I've got slant golf, and if you don't have an updated database or your GPS isn't working, you'd have to file something else. Hopefully, you've got a couple VORs. Um, so we'll leave it on golf, and then the next is ICAO equipment. What do you have on board? We have this is where you would put your LPV, right? I haven't done a lot of this. That's why I'm asking and deferring to Mike on some of this, because if you're WAS and you can do LPV approaches, you would put it here. B.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
And then if you had DME on board, you would select that. You select everything that you have on board, and it looks
And I
like,
want to point out on that DME though, before you leave it,
yeah,
that is not the GPS substituting as DME. This is not like if you got a Garmin 530, you tune in a VOR. Once it identifies the station, it gives you the distance to that station. That's not what we're talking about. That's not actually using DME. So you would not check this box. So if you have a separate a standalone DME receiver, or you know, then you would check this box.
yeah, that's correct. You have to have a DME receiver. That's what that means.
Correct.
And my 182, I don't see anything else there that I have. I'm working on
You have
getting the,
GNSS, right?
didn't get down there
Go up a
yet.
little bit more.
Oh, did I pass it?
Yeah. Okay, down from there. Keep going
Oh,
down.
yeah, there's
Just below.
G. Okay.
There's G. You have that.
The GNSS for and I'm getting my CPDLC letter of approval pretty soon
Oh,
here.
cool.
Yeah,
I can't even spell that.
I can't either. MLS, I get ILS. I have an ILS receiver and on board, so I can check that. I have a VOR on board. Let's see anything else. Basically, just checking everything that you have. I don't have TACAN, VOR, VHF, RTF, WTF. What's RTF?
Yeah, that's a $64 question. I wonder if anybody knows. But
You
yes,
know?
you have that.
You don't know what it is. You probably don't have it.
Well, in this case, most of us do. I'd venture to guess almost all of us here probably do have VHF RTF.
Oh, really? What is VHF,
That's,
RTF?
that's radio telephone. That's your comm radio.
Oh, VHF. Why don't they just say that?
That's the ICAO term for it.
Okay, very good. I just
And
learned that. I didn't know that. Radio tele. Okay.
believe it or
So,
not, you are also PBN approved.
okay. What and PBN is
That's performance-based navigation. And that's going to tie into allowing you to file, assuming you have a GPS that can do terminal mode navigation, which probably 95% of us do.
yeah,
This is going to allow you to do RNAV, SIDS, and stars.
right. And if you see one that requires require RNP of zero point 0.3, you probably don't have that.
Right.
That is a certain kind of performance-based navigation, but that's more restrictive than what you may have. So even though you have PBN, you need to make sure that yours meets what's required for the approach.
Right.
I think that's it. Oh, 8.33 spacing.
Most of us have it,
Yeah.
although you have to specifically turn it on
Right.
in your comm radio.
Yeah, a lot of times you'll have to, pull or push or find a way to activate that. So I know
So
the
now just above that, 3 clicks above that is VHF RTF. So why didn't you click that one?
because that means I assumed that meant only that, but since I already had it up here with the VOR and ILS, I checked that one.
Exactly. So you can also unclick the ILS up above because it's included,
Gotcha.
subsumed into that S one. So you don't need that one specifically because it's included.
Ah, makes sense. Thank you. So what would happen if you do have
VOR are
those?
the same.
What would happen if you do have those? It would be doubled up, but would that hurt anything?
No,
Okay.
it's
It
just
just
redundant and repetitive.
so it's saying the same thing over again,
Right.
and you're saying basically that you have the same equipment more than one time.
In more than one way, yeah.
So you're being redundant,
It's being redundant. Exactly.
and you're saying
That's
things
what I'm
over and
trying to
over
say.
again.
Right. Nobody does that, do they?
No, no. All right, good. So ICAO PBN. Oh my gosh, this is fun.
Oh,
What do we do here,
you're
Mike?
gonna open up this can of worms.
Perf-
Basically, I check everything that has RNAV, some number, and GNSS.
RNAV some number GNSS.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good advice. RNAV 5. This would be like for an
So
FMS, wouldn't it? RNAV with
yeah, all the B's are RNAV 5, and then you have numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which are the ways that you can obtain or meet that RNAV 5 standard. So at work, our jet airplanes are B1 because we use all sensors, some
right.
combination of sensors.
So if all
Most
you
of
have
our
is
little,
if all you have is GNSS and you're flying in one of those areas where they're GPS jamming, you don't have the dual DME or VOR DME like an IRS or like our FMSs would have
exactly.
to back up the position.
Right. So come on down. Then the next group is C, which is RNAV 2. I'm told that we're not supposed to check that for our airplanes, but I don't know why it would hurt anything. Um, D is RNAV1, that's terminal mode. So we can do that. So D2 is RNAV, some number in GNSS.
Got it. Okay.
Okay,
And these are all
RNV4.
listed. There's actually a section in the ForeFlight handbook,
Yes.
pilot's manual that goes over these
Yeah, let me just see what
before.
that
So
is.
we got definitely RNP 1 GNSS.
Yes,
Do that.
that's terminal mode.
Yeah. 1 mile.
Yes. Now, S1 you can do.
RNP approach.
So this is just a basic garden variety, and we've been transitioning into the newer version of IFR approach charts. Now have a navigation equipment box at the top of the notes section,
Yeah.
and if that navigation equipment says RNP approach, that's what this means. So if you have this checked, this will tell the air traffic control system that you can do that kind of approach.
Okay. But again, it's up to you to know what your limits, what required navigation performance you have.
Yes, and so this is often confused though with the RNP AR type approach, which is two below that. That's Tango one. That means you can do an RNP AR approach, which is used to be known as the RNAV RNP, and those approaches
Right.
say authorization required. That's what the AR means. So if
Okay.
your airplane can do this, and not most of our little airplanes can't. Some of the higher end corporate jets can. They can do AR approaches, but for the most part, we are stuck with the RNP approach. I flew in a Garmin, I'm sorry, it was a Cirrus SR22T recently. It had a G6 evolution of the
Oh, cool. I haven't seen
perspective.
that yet.
That can do a barrel VNAV. I was doing an IPC and I was trying to be mean and disable the satellite-based augmentation system to go
Nice.
from LPV to LNAV. It downgraded to a barrel VNAV approach. So
Wow.
I think in that case, that airplane you want to check that Sierra 2 S2.
Okay, that's interesting. And we're probably losing some of our VFR pilots, but I think it's
Oh
important.
yeah,
If you're
probably.
setting this up for
Sorry.
IFR, it's important to get that right.
Yeah.
Any other information? You can
Yep.
take a look at here and see what would you check here on other information.
At the very least, you need to do the code at the top. And this is the transponder code that your ADSB outputs. And you have to go to the aircraft registry. Uh, Whoever installed your ADSB out transponder should have told you what this code is. You can actually find it on FlightAware if you can look up your tail number.
Okay, I tell you what,
It's
let me go to that on, I'll go to the browser here, and here's FlightAware. So if I look up this N number
Yeah.
and then click on that, and we can, where would you get it
And
here?
if you click on, I can't,
Registration?
yeah, yes, registration
And if
information.
that's too
And
small, I can make it larger, but in the trans,
yeah, over, oh shoot, hang on, go
uh,
back up. On that left-hand column above the box there, it says Mode S code. Go down about a little bit more to the
yeah,
bottom
right
one in
here.
that column. Grab that, there's that slash. You want the number on the right, that 6 digit. That's the number you want.
Okay, and I'm gonna try and make this easier to see. So down
There you
here,
go. Hey, that helps.
that out of the way. So yeah, this number here under Mode S code. So I'll
Right.
copy that, and then I'm gonna have to type it because I'm putting it on my iPad. So we'll
Oh, right.
go back to the iPad, and I'll type in this number.
If you're really lazy, you can pull this up in the browser on your iPad and copy it all there.
Right, and I could have done that. I don't know what tabs I have open on my browser on my iPad, so I better
Yeah,
stay
it
away
could be
from.
something
Oh
scary in
yeah, yeah.
there.
So if you put a code from someone else's transponder, what would happen?
Uh, then one of the things I've seen is people will post online. I've seen this. Hey, somebody's flying my airplane. It's over in Florida, but it's never left. My airplane has never left Oregon.
Ah, yeah. So that's what it's using when you look at FlightAware or something like that, or the
I
ADSB.
believe so. Yeah.
Okay. How about STS special handling? Oh, this is if
Okay.
you're doing so, like if you're a medevac aircraft or search and
Right.
rescue or military. I think there's some, I've seen that before as well. Like you're going to handle your own military separation MARSA. So if one of these apply to you, you would check it. They don't
Right.
apply to me.
I don't know what STS stands for.
I don't either. Space shuttle.
Space Transportation System.
That's
That
it.
was the
Yeah,
space shuttle program.
sure. Just if you don't know, make it up and sound confident.
There you go.
The dinghy. I don't
Santa
have any.
Rosa. It's a nice little airport up there.
I don't have a dinghy on board. What's a dinghy, Mike?
Oh, I thought it was dingy. If you had an old paint scheme.
Oh, so yes on mine. Okay. All right, and then emergency equipment that if you have life jackets on board. If you're filing a flight plan over water, I would update this and say yes, I have life jackets if you have them. Radios. I do carry a spare radio. I carry a VHF radio.
Hmm.
Put that in there. I also have an ELT.
Okay.
That's where you'd put that, and that's emergency equipment. Survival gear, I always recommend that you carry something. What do you have it for? This is more of an awareness thing for you. What are you flying over? Make sure that you have it. If you don't have it, you don't check it, then maybe they'll rescue you faster, but I wouldn't count. Then we can make this the default aircraft. If that's the only one we fly, I can click on that and make it default. And you can see up here now it says that this is the default aircraft. What does that do for me? When I go to the maps page and I start a new flight plan, and let's say I want to go from K DTO to Tulsa, and I start that. Well, it didn't put the default aircraft in there. I'm not quite
Yeah, I
sure.
think it's mostly on the flights tab. If you're one of those who uses the flights tab to
Okay.
create your flight,
Okay, so let's go to the flights tab, which
which
is
is
right
another
here.
way to do it.
Yeah, it is another way. So we want to add a flight. And where do we want to go? We want to depart. And you can see, did it do the aircraft here? Yeah, it did. You're right.
Yeah.
One here. So the default aircraft shows up if you plan starting on the
Let the
flight
record
page.
show you said I was right about
The
something.
record will
Yay!
show that I didn't know something again, and you were right about it. That's 2 for you. You get the award I'm holding in my hand.
Phew.
Okay, so that's basically
Ooh.
aircraft setup. You can have your default aircraft in there, but make sure that when you do plan a flight, either whether it be here in flights, that you make sure everything is set properly, or whether you do it on the maps page in here, make sure each of these 6 buttons, 3 on the left, 3 on the right, you get those all accurate for your flight planning. There's the aircraft. Here's the profile. My profile is the one that I'm using, the one that I made, and I called it my profile. I'm going VFR. I'm going to make this VFR. And is this an easterly flight or westerly? It's saying
Ooh.
easterly, but is it? It is easterly. From Denton up here, I'm going easterly, basically. So I think 5,500 feet VFR easterly, that works pretty good for me. But you can look at this and see what are the winds and the fuel going to be. However, I haven't told it when I'm leaving yet, so that might not be that accurate. So before I select an altitude, I'm going to go over here and say, I'm leaving tomorrow morning at, we'll say 7 a.m. and close that. Now let me go back to the altitude selector. It's going to use the forecast winds for that time to update these numbers for me. And I can save 3 minutes. Let's go back to VFR. It's an hour 13. It's an hour 10 down at 4,500 feet. Looks like the winds are more favorable down low for by a few minutes. So I'll select, I got to go odd, don't I? I'll select
Yes,
50.
I'm afraid you do, Brian.
Yeah, I always try to. And I don't like to fly direct. Let's see what kind of routes we got in here. Just again, you can see what kind of routes have been cleared. At ForeFlight recommended route, usually, that's an IFR route with an IFR altitude, but that usually is the one you're going to get if you're flying IFR. That's pretty good. I'll just select that route, but I'm going to do it VFR, so I'm going to ignore the altitude update to 5,000 and IFR altitude. I'll hit ignore on that. So any other questions on, so there's my route, and I can send that to flights and go on from there. But we've got the aircraft set up. We're pushing, 50 minutes. Anything we want to talk about? Any comments about how it's going? Or I'll bring you back on here, Mike. Anything you want to show?
I'm seeing some comments here, a lot of issues with lagging, the video lagging, and the video out of sync with the audio.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and somebody says, please walk us through flight aware again. So that's with the aircraft setup. Um, KO surveillance. One person suggested for Avidyne IFD users, you can go to page 378 of the pilot guide for the ICAO codes.
Page
Um,
378.
yeah, and I presume that's with that version of software for that. I don't know if that's a 440 or a
I don't
540
think
or a
that's it.
550. So you just look around. Garmin also has a lot of good information on what to put on these codes. Um, I hesitate to suggest calling your avionics shop because a lot of them just have absolutely no idea about this kind of
I
thing.
think
Maybe
they
you'll
should
be
call
on your
you,
own.
Mike. You want to give him your number?
Yeah, 1-800 five five
555.
five 1212. Yeah.
I'm looking at the live stream, and it looks like it's several minutes behind what we're doing, and I'm not sure if the chat is pretty far off of that. Uh, we'll get some feedback on that, and we'll go back and review what you guys are saying. So tell us, anything you see, what you'd like to have us look at it. Any comments you have about this. It's going to be prettier. Like I said, we're going to make it more user friendly and prettier. We're going to look at your suggestions and we can modify it. The beauty is that I'm only paying my son John, who developed this for us. Which if I'm going to pay that much money, I'd rather go to him than Zoom. So,
Hmm.
and I won't go begging you guys for tips to try to pay for this. Although if we want to do some kind of scholarship thing, we may do something like that. But I can easily switch. Here's Mike and me talking like that. Hey, Mike,
Oh,
you're
hey,
over
Brian.
there. Is it over there? Or, yeah.
Yeah, I got to
Hello.
remember which way you are over there.
Right.
We do have a
So
lot of questions about jumping into weight and balance. So,
you want to do that?
we
We have a
could.
few minutes. You want to give something? We got a few minutes.
Yeah, let's do a little something on that right quick here.
Okay. I'll
Trying to
give it
remember.
I'll give you the
Um,
screen.
okay, so when you're setting up this weight and balance, share this tab instead. What I'm going to show you is, and oh, I got to do this too. So this is what I'm looking for. This is a dynamic regulatory system. You can get any document the FAA has on any subject for any airplane that was ever published is available in here. And I will do the search for the aircraft type is a 182. So all the Cessna 182 type certificate data sheets are in one place. So if we apply that, we see here that it's TCDS number 3 Alpha 13. We can look at that document and let me get rid of this little page here. So this is the information, the data sheet for all these aircraft. So you were talking about a 182P, for instance. The next, I'm going to make this just a little bit easier to do. And thought I was going to. If you click in the upper right corner here is this little download button. You click on that and open it here. Now it's open in a web page. We can take you to the next step even from here. I'm going to click send to, and I'm going to click to send this to, scroll down here to ForeFlight. Now I'm going to have a document inside ForeFlight that is the type certificate data sheet for the airplane. So now I can search and bookmark and whatever else I want to do here. But what we want to do is scroll here to find your airplane. So in your case, we were talking about a 182P Papa model.
I've saved that on my iPad, the one for my airplane, because when it
Yeah,
comes to airworthiness, sometimes you need to know, the airplane's airworthy when it conforms to that type certificate data sheet. Well, you need to know
right.
what's on it.
So for instance, right here, you can see there's two different engines allowed on this airplane, the dash R, the dash S. We looked at that. We saw that when you selected your airplane and you had to tell it whether you had an R or an S engine. So here's your serial numbers. C note 4. Okay, but what I really want to start to get to here, here's all the propellers that are allowed. Here's your airspeed limits. So if you're wondering what your airspeed limits are, they're right here. It's interesting that okay. Yeah, the 296 and so on were knots, and these other ones were miles per hour. So here's a couple important pieces of information right here is your center of gravity range. This is pretty important. Here's your maximum weight, your number of seats. Notice it tells us there are 4 seats in the airplane. 2 are in the front between a 32 arm and a 50 arm, and there's 2 that are fixed at 74. So this is where it's really useful to have this document saved on your iPad, or you can have it open on another or on a web page or whatever. But you're going to be referring to these numbers a whole lot here in just a moment. And then down just below, we see the center of the baggage limits. So we're allowed 200 pounds of baggage. 120 can be between these 2 stations, and then 80 in these 2 stations. And then the next page, we talk about the fuel tanks. So do you have standard range tanks? Do you have long range tanks? And depending on the serial number. So the earlier models here, the lower serial numbers, looks like they have a little bit more fuel. That's interesting. 62, 50, yeah. So the later ones are actually a little bit less fuel. So that's going to be important in a moment. You got your oil number. And let me see, I'm missing one set of numbers here. Oh, CG range. This is the corners of the center of gravity envelope, and I'll show you that in just a moment when we go to set this up. So here's where we're going to get these numbers that we're going to use, and all the same data is available on every airplane that there's a TCDS for. So if you fly a Mooney, a Commander, a Comanche, or whatever it is, you're going to get these numbers. So to set up Brian's airplane, what was your tail number again?
November 31 Alpha Juliet.
Did my website finally decide to start showing?
No, it's showing. It looks like it's showing your iPad.
Let me turn that off just to remove all the doubt from it. Okay, so the tail number that you were creating was what again?
31 Alpha Juliet.
31 Alpha Juliet. So I'm going to make that airplane, and I've got long range tanks, and I'm going to use the empty data. So this is where we need the number out of the POH for your airplane. So we're going to use the number here, but if you're creating the weight and balance calculation for your own airplane, you need the numbers for your airplane. I can't stress that enough. Your mileage will vary. Don't use these numbers. So what's the empty weight of your airplane?
Yes.
I'll pick a number. I'll say it's 1734.
I don't have that in front of me. Apologize. I
And the
deleted it
CG
before we started tonight, and we'll wrap up soon, guys. We hit the hour mark right now, so we'll wrap it up. And we also don't have our support team in the background answering questions, so we apologize for that. So
Yeah.
it's just me and Mike.
So, and I just picked a CG just to throw a number out there. But again, you need the specific numbers for your individual aircraft. So we're almost done here, but it's telling us we got a few problems. We don't have the front seat set. That it used 41. The front baggage area ranged. If you remember when we looked at that document, it ranged from 82 to 108. So it chose 95. It just split the difference and used the middle number. Aft baggage arm. So we've done our best to set it up. Let's see what we've got. So right now it says we're out of balance. And we're lightweight. So I think I needed a CG that was a little bit farther aft. Let me just see. Yeah, so our limits are between 33 and 39, and I told it we're starting at 30. So I'm just going to edit that. I'm going to make it 35. Okay, so now we're loaded within limits, and all of our limits are right here right now. What this is saying is we have no fuel on board, we have no passengers, we have no baggage, we got nothing on board the aircraft. So our actual weight is way down here. So this gets a little bit more tricky if you need to set more things like this up, but this is the setup. Now we're going to work with a load, so we're going to come over here and click the load, and let's say we've got a pilot on board, and I'm a $190.
Must be nice.
And let's say what does John weigh? I'm going to give him a lesson. So
probably 170, 180.
I'll be nice and say 170.
Oh, 155. Sorry about that, John.
Oh, man, I got to recalibrate my eyeballs again. So
So I
right
think
now it's
I think your browser's hidden, Mike. Just so we just real quick a business here. If I hide your iPad, there's nothing behind it.
okay. Yeah,
So
I disabled that screen share thing just so we wouldn't be surprised.
okay, all right.
Okay, so right now all of our weights are in one spot here, takeoff, landing, and zero fuel, because I didn't tell it we had any fuel on board. So to do that, I click down here in the fuel tanks section and I tell it I've got, let's say 50 gallons of fuel on board. So now it says at takeoff, I'm up here. Once I burn all my fuel, my CG is going to be moving over to here. And both my takeoff slash landing center of gravity is good. And when I burned all the fuel in the tanks, I'm still good.
So what I get from that is when you don't tell it you have any fuel, you don't burn any fuel. So if
It's exactly right.
why
Yeah.
put fuel in the
So,
airplane? Because you're not going to burn any. I mean, you save a lot of money.
right. So if you are just weird and you burn some fuel anyway, let's say we fly for an hour and change, we go do some maneuvers and whatnot. So we're going to burn 15 gallons on our flight. We click save. Now the circle here is our takeoff weight and center of gravity. The square is our landing. So that's where it's going to be when we take off. That's where it's going to be when we're planning to land. And if we decide to stay in the air forever, eventually we're going to burn all the fuel and then we'll be over here. So I encourage you to set this up for your aircraft and play with these numbers and see how much damage you can do. See how much weight you need to put in that airplane to load it too far forward or too far aft or overweight or what have you. And the last thing I'll show you on this is one of the tricks I do. If I have a person that I carry quite frequently, let's say I often fly with my wife, she often sits in the back seat. She did just the other day. I can create a special load just for her or for that thing. So in this aft seat, I'm going to create a new load here. I'm going to put my wife's name in here. She's Beth. She weighs about 120. And then once I've done that, I can click done. So now I can just uncheck everything that's not installed in the airplane. So now here's what our weight and balance looks like with me in the right seat, John in the left seat, and my wife in the back seat. And if my wife gets out, we drop her off where she wanted to go. I can do that a single click. And now I've done another weight and balance without her in there. So another way to use this is, let's say you have something that you use in your airplane quite often. Maybe you've got a box that you keep, I don't know, your chocks, your a spare quart of oil, maybe a couple of tools, some gear that you keep in the airplane. So I'm going to create a new load. I'm just going to call it normal stuff. And maybe it's 25 pounds worth. And I throw that in there all the time. Now I click done. And I don't have to separately add that in. If I take it out for whatever reason, I just click that and now that stuff is not installed in my airplane. Another way you might use this is I was looking a little while ago, we were playing with the idea of getting an e-bike.
Yeah, or life rafts too.
Yeah, let's do a life raft. So we talked about that and setting up the flight plan. Those are actually fairly heavy. I want to say about 65 pounds.
Yeah.
That sound about right?
Yeah, they're compact and heavy. Yeah.
Yeah, real dense, kind of like me. So we click done. So if you have your raft in the airplane, you can just check that box. You've got our normal airplane stuff in there. So now it's complaining because while our takeoff weight is within limits, I've overweighed that baggage area. I'm only allowed 80 pounds back there, and it says I got 90 pounds. So now maybe I need to move it. Maybe I'll put that baggage area up here instead in baggage area A. So let's look at that. Raft is 65 pounds and click done. So now I could put the raft in the baggage A or B. And if I put it into A, that's what it looks like. Now, if I don't have my normal stuff and I throw the raft in the very, very back, that's okay too. So you can instantly move common loads like that around. It makes it super easy and super flexible for your airplane.
Hey, Mike, someone wanted you to post the URL and the info page for the type certificate data sheet website. If you could maybe add that to the info tab lines.
Yeah, that's the last item.
Oh, it's there. Okay, great. Good, good,
It's
good.
at
Got it.
drs.faa.gov.
Okay, good, good.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, we're hitting the hour
I'm way
mark.
ahead of you.
Yeah, I don't want to. Yeah, you are. I appreciate that. Everybody, it's not hard to stay ahead of me.
Well, true.
So, is it if there's nothing else, we'll wrap up. But again, I wish I could give Wings credit for this. I didn't set up a spans event for it. It's just our beta. I didn't know which way we'd go with it. Yep, yep. All right. Well, thank you everybody, and thank you especially to my son John, who made all this possible and made this
Yeah,
happen.
thanks,
And
John. Great work. Keep it
designed
going.
this. Yep, yep. And we'll see you guys on May 13th for the real ForeFlight workshops.